Plenty to debate with our Bream Team panel tonight. Rebelle Communications CEO Laura Fink and JK Strategies founder Jack Kalavritinos. Great to see you both again.
Good to be here.
Thanks, Shannon.
Okay, so Jack, the vice president says today if the president is running, and she believes he is, and he said he's going to run, she will support him and run right alongside him. Despite those calls, as you saw Kevin pointing out, some on the left saying we'd like another name, another option.
Yeah, it's not surprising that, I mean, she has to say that. There's nothing else that she can really say, but it is the drum beats are getting louder. I mean, whether it's the New York Times and Politico, whether it's the Bernie Sanders group, that is they're planning on doing this whole ad campaign, "Don't Run, Joe," after the election. I mean, the Democratic Party's in a bind because they know that he can't run, and they have someone who's one of the most unpopular vice presidents in history. So they've got a challenge on their hands.
So the polling shows 2/3 of his own party does not want him to run again. They want a different nominee. And here's what the New York Times, in citing that, it's an opinion piece, but they cite that and say this under the headline, "Joe Biden is too old to be president again. I hope he doesn't run again because he's too old." 64% of Democrats want a different nominee in 2024. Those Democrats cite Biden's age more than any other factor, though job performance is close behind. Laura.
Well, the other thing that those Democrats say, 97% of them, in fact, is that in a head-to-head with Donald Trump, they would support Joe Biden. And you would think with 33% approval rating, he's in the doldrums, that Donald Trump would beat him in an overall poll, not just Democrats, but Republicans and independents. But Biden bests him by 4 points in the latest polling. So I just wonder, how low do Democrats' poll numbers have to go before the head of the Republican Party can win? So don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. Joe Biden's doing just fine. Gas prices had their biggest single-day drop just recently. Unemployment numbers beat expectations, and he's looking ahead to try to beat the odds in the midterm.
Whispers, I don't know whether that's true. I mean, maybe plans are being made for a December announcement or, a late November announcement, and people are sort of defining that as pre-November. I did a quick poll of family and friends before the show. All 14 said they thought it would be a bad idea, mainly because they want the focus as Republicans to be on where we are right now and the Biden economy and energy and all that's going wrong that has led to these historically low poll ratings. And they don't want the topic to be whether Donald Trump is running in 2024.
So meanwhile, we talked about in that piece the January 6th hearings. There's another one tomorrow. We're not exactly sure what we're going to get or who's going to testify or clips of testimony that we'll see. But our David Spun is talking about what's happening and who they're not calling. He says, as of today, Tony Ornato and Bobby Engel and the driver who drove then President Trump on 1/6/21 have still not been invited to testify. So this is in response to Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, because they've said it's not accurate. They are, quote, ready to testify and, quote, waiting by their phones, the source says. Fox is told an invitation will likely come soon. However, it's not clear if the testimony will be in public or behind the scenes and then released to the public. So, Laura, if Cassidy Hutchinson has said something that these men say does not square with reality, why not have them when they say we will voluntarily come? Why not have their testimony and have it publicly?
I don't think there's any debate about that. I think the debate is about timing. We have to hear tomorrow from the extremist groups and the analysis of the extremist groups that took up arms and invaded the Capitol. So I would just say on the priority list, they have their set calendar, and they will certainly do it, and that's fine. But there are bigger fish to fry. I think we all need to know about those right-wing extremist groups. We need to prevent another attack on the Capitol and what was a truly shameful day. I think they're also going to talk about President Trump and his dereliction of duty, the things that he not only that he did, but that he did not do in response to this vicious and violent attack on our democracy.
All important questions we need answered, Jack, and people on both sides of the aisle need to come up and offer the truth about what happened that day. So why not call in those Secret Service agents and the driver, or at least give them a call and say, we are going to plan to talk to you and hear from you if what their star witness is saying is in conflict with what these people claim?
Shannon, exactly. I mean, January 6th was a dark day, and Republicans and Democrats can agree to that. But what is being done now with this committee hearing in order to show that democracy was under assault, in and of itself, in a way, is an assault on due process and democracy? Why aren't witnesses allowed to be called? Why isn't there cross-examination? On the other hand, there are some other examples of where Republicans feel It is, in a way, it is like a trial, and yet there isn't. This is a historically bad situation where you do not have in any way the minority party being represented by representatives that they wish to be there. So it really is in and of itself an assault on democracy.
But part of that is because Republicans chose to check out when they couldn't have the members they wanted on the committee. So there's a lot of conversation to go on there about who's missing when it comes to cross-examination. Even as, Laura, you know, this isn't a trial. It feels very much like a public opinion trial. But I'm glad that we can all agree on the one thing, that we don't ever want to see a repeat of that day. And we'll leave it there. Thank you both.